Good morning. We're learning as Chus for Shleim of Ilan Chaya Basarach from Meir ben Cyril Peril from the top of Mem Gimel Mal, top line. Amarula. Ches mine trefus nemru lo Moshe b'Sinai. He divides up the trefus. We had just said that all of in the previous summit we had said a pshat that all of the different nekuvas, different versions of animals that have different places that an animal could have a hole in it are puzzle. And he now further subdivides the different trephus by saying that there are 8 different wounds that can cause a animal to be a tref. Nekuva, if it has a hole; psuka, if it's cut off; netula, if it's entirely removed; chasura, if it's missing; krua, if it's ripped; udrusa, if it was scratched or clawed by an animal; nefula, if it's displaced, dislocated; ushvura, or broken, like a broken shatter, we said. Lafuke, so we said these 8 types of wounds or the 8 types of abnormalities that are trephus. Lafuke lekusa de rochash bar papa. That excludes the sickness, the kidney disease. If you see there's a animal that has a disease in one of its kidneys, it's going to be a treifa, which was interesting because I thought that, I guess he disagrees with that. He said that I asked that, kidney person could live without with just one kidney. I would assume an animal as well. They said that's the reason why that one was talking about an animal that had kidney disease is because maybe the kidney disease spreads from one kidney to the other. So that's why, even if it's just in one kidney, that would be enough to pass it. Amar Chia Barav, Ches Trefus Yesh B'Nekuva. There were 8 different trefus that we mentioned in the Bryce and the Mishnah that all are with a hole, that they came holes in different organs. Imtoimer tests, and if you'll say there's 9, if you count them up, Mara, the gallbladder, Rabbi Yehuda Katanila. That was only a Yachid. Rabbi Yehuda was the man who was the one who had that pshat, that shita, but the other Chachamim disagreed. The Tanya, Nikva Hakeva, if the keva, which is the stomach, got a hole in it. Nikva Hadakim, if the intestines got a hole in it. Treifa, the treifa. Rabbi Yehuda Af Nikva Hamara. Yehuda adds on. Yehuda adds on to that list. In addition to those, you also have a hole in the gallbladder. I think we're just saying the things that are part of the digestive system. So he added on. There was another part of the digestive system that a hole would pass. Amr Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amr Rabbi Yochanan. Halacha Rabbi Yosef bar Yehud. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef says b'shem Rabbi Yochanan, halacha Rabbi Yosef bar Yehud. Once we said Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef b'shmei in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, this halacha, we say some other statements of Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Maya hadrulei chavrei Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda. What was the response? Why did the other Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda? Why they say that a hole in the gallbladder is not fatal, it's not a treifa? Because Yishbach la'aretz marasi ba'adayin Yivkayim. It says about Eev that he said, my gall, my marasi is his gallbladder. He says it's pouring onto the ground. There was a hole. He was talking about all his ailments. Eev suffered from many infirmities. And one of them was, he said, my gallbladder, the gall is spilling onto the ground. There's a big hole in my gallbladder that lets it drip. And Eev was alive when he said this. So obviously, it's not a treifa. Hard to understand this, right? Because nobody holds that a treifa dies right away. Of course, everyone agrees it could take at least up to a year, and even according to the other mandam, it could take several years. Amalahem ein maskirin ma'asen. One answers though that's not a raya. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda would answer that's not a raya from the fact that Eev had a hole in his gallbladder and he was still alive, because it was a nace altogether that Eev was alive. He had so many sicknesses that should have killed him. Yiflach kal yosai Below Yachmoil, he says, will my kidneys split? The Rishon said, he said, I think Eve said that the Rishon split my kidneys and he has no rachmanos on me. Mika Chai, can someone whose kidneys are split in half, can he live? That you can't live at all. And nevertheless, Eve was alive. Elanisa shiny. So the reason why Eve survived these illnesses was a nace of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Right? We know that that the case, what happened with Eve, is that there was the Rebbeinu Shalom was arguing with the Malach HaMavis, with the Satan. The Satan was saying the Yidden only do things because they don't have nisyonis, and the Rebbeinu Shalom gave him permission to go after Eve, and he gave the Satan did all these terrible things to Eve, and the Rebbeinu Shalom in his instructions to the Satan says the Chsiv rakas nafshay shumar. He said to the Satan, do whatever you want to him, but don't kill him.
Eve was Eve?
Yeah.
One of the advisors of
I think there was like talk about, right? There was discussions about whether he was a Yid or not. He was a Navi, right? Right, Luzi, right? He was a Yid, right? Maybe he was Megaya.
But he was one of the advisors.
Maybe he was a Jewish. Maybe he was a Jewish advisor.
Jewish advisor.
Right. It was 3 advisors. One Eve suffered because he was quiet. Right. The one who gave the eitzah to how to go after Yidden with water. He was punished.
But the two were going. I mean, it was strange that he would ask one of the Yidden what to do with the Yidden.
Right.
Wasn't it Bilam, Eov, and Yisro?
Right.
Right.
As far as I know.
So maybe it was Megaya. I don't know. I don't remember. But I think maybe the Gemara might even directly address whether he was a Yid or not. I think it might be. I don't know. I have to look up the Gemara. Back in Brachas. That was 5 years ago. Or another way to look at it is a year and a half, like a year away. A year in the future. Get back to Brachas. For Amr, like it's funny now, we're at the point where we're closer to Brachas, to the end, than we are to the beginning. Amr Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amr Rabbi Yochanan, another memra from Yitzchak bar Yosef. Halacha Rabbi Omer Kazayis. Halacha is like the man Amr who says Kazayis. Umiya Amar, yeah, well, we're going to see in a second what that means. That was talking about the liver, which I actually had noted by the Mishnah. I thought it was interesting. In the Mishnah we had said, Nidla hakave b'lo klum, it's going to be a treifa. If the liver was taken away and nothing was left on it, then it's a treifa. It's mashma. Then anything more than a mashahu is not a treifa. But he says, like the Mandam who says, it doesn't have to be a mashu, it has to be a kazayas of the liver. Which I just noted. I don't think Menachem agreed with me or said anything about it. But I think that you have to have most of the liver. I know that people who get sick and they have to take away part of their liver, they can't take away too much. The liver does regenerate up to a point. I think also the problem with the liver is once it's very hard to remove the cancer from it since it's so full of so rich. The cancer spreads throughout it. Maybe that's the problem. I know the liver does regenerate to some extent. I guess that they're arguing. One man, Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef, says b'shem Rav Yochanan, not that if there's any amount of liver left, there has to be a kazayas of liver left in order for it not to be a trait. So we say b'shem Rav Yochanan, halach is stam mishnah. Halach is like a stam mishnah. It's not like a lunchtime and a klum. Our mishnah said, as a stamius, that if there was nothing left over of the liver, then it's a treifa, but anything left, it's not. Even less than a kazais. It's taka machloikas amaroyim whether Rabbi Yochanan hold halachic stam mishnah or not. The Amar, this is not the Amar, but the Amar. This is a new thing. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Morosh and Nikva. We said b'shem Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda. that a mara shenikva, a mara that got a gallbladder, that got a hole in it, is a treifa. Well, he says mara shenikva b'kavod sutma, if the gallbladder got a hole, but the liver is right next to it and it's covering over the hole of the gallbladder kshera, that's not a treifa because it has even though there's a neck, it's plugged up with the liver. Nikav hakurkavin, if the gizzard got a hole in it, the kishaloi, as well as the gizzard, it seems, has two coverings. There's the outer covering, which we would call the gizzard. The kishaloi, Rashi says, is an inner membrane on the inside of the gizzard. So the kishaloi kayim, if that inner membrane is still intact, kosher, then it's not considered to be a treif. I don't remember Kurkovan in the Mishnah. Is Kurkovan in the Mishnah?
This is the first time we've had the word gizzard.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Yeah. Kishaloi Klibab News. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where this came from.
Well, in the Mishnah, most of it was Behema Gasa, so maybe this is like comparable.
From a bird. Yeah, maybe this is by birds. I don't know, right? The gizzard, I think, is only for a bird, right? The gizzard, I think, right? That's the part that the keeps where it, like I know there's a thing that they eat stones, and the stones are used by the bird to crush the food inside of them in the gizzard. Maybe it's only for birds. In any case, obviously a gizzard that has a hole in it, we can see from this Gemara, it's possible. What? So, saying it's kosher. What's the din if it's the other way around? If the inside membrane got a hole and the outer gizzard is still around, is that going to also be kosher? Kashmad, Amrav Nachman, he gives zeh b'lei zeh kosher. Either one, if it's missing, it's going to be kosher as long as the other one is intact. And the Bach, for some reason, says oy zeh shaloi keneged zeh, or if the holes in the hole in the gizzard, in the outer skin, the outer portion, or the inner portion are not opposite one another. So the whatever it is can't leak out through that hole because it's not in the same place. Also going to be kosher, which is going to come back. Amarav, Shnei Iris Yeshlei Leveshet. There are two membranes or two layers to the veshet, which is the esophagus. Chitzin Adam Pnimi Lavin. The outside portion is red and the inside portion is white. Nikav zeh b'loi zeh kosher. And if only one of them gets a hole in it, that's not considered that it's nakov, it's not a hole that goes through, then it's going to be kosher. What difference does it make to me what the colors of the different layers are? Let me just say that if you go through a hole through only one of them, it's going to be kosher. It's coming to tell you if the colors are reversed, that itself is a trait. If they're the wrong color, if the inside is red and the outside is white, that's a fatal flaw in a animal. But we just said legabi the veshet that if you have a hole in either the inside layer or the outside layer, it's going to be kosher. What if they both have holes, but the two holes are not opposite one another? It's not all in the same place. Impossible. So this is why the Bach put it in before Zeshaloi Keneged Zeh, because we already passed before about this. So now we're saying, he says that by the Veshet, it's going to be kosher. By the Kurkuvin, it's going to be possible. Rashi explains because since by the Kurkovan there's a lot of action. What did he say, Rashi? Since by the Kurkovan, the gizzard, the food, like we said, accumulates there, and like I said, it crushes, it uses the pebbles to crush the food. So since there's a lot, it's like an agitating motion inside of the gizzard that will cause eventually for the food to go through the two layers, even though they're not opposite one another. Stuff will leak out through both holes because this is like an agitation. So it gets in between the two layers, and then it gets to is gizzard only by a bird? Is there a gizzard by a mammal? No, never heard. Yeah. Okay. Must be right, Lizzie. It must be just by Iphis that we have gizzards. Maskef Ravashi Adam should be the other way around. Veshet achlabei upayabei a veshet, which is used the food pipe. That food is constantly going down it, so he's always it's always moving around. Upayabei, and the animal makes noises through it. Ravach, it gets wider. Gomdale, and it gets smaller. Pashta, and it stretches. Zimnin demihandizin bahadiyadadi. So therefore, if there are two holes, even if in the veshet, in the two layers of the veshet, they'll sometimes correspond because of all the activity that goes on. Kurkovan, the menach naichi, doesn't move around, even though there's action inside of it. It doesn't. There's no movement in it. The kai. So therefore, the non-corresponding holes would not possible, would not make it a trait. He said, you are correct, you Ravashi are correct, that the Kurkovan, the non-aligned holes will be kosher, and by the Veshet, it's going to be possible. Okay, we're 4 lines to the bottom. Amem Gimel Amra. Amar Rabba, Krum Sha'ala Machmas Maka Beveshet, a scar tissue that arose because of a wound on the veshet. That means there was a hole in the veshet, which is enough to make it a treifa. And then that wound healed and a scar tissue arose on it. Ain't it krum? It's not. We don't say that that's going to save his life, and the animal can live with that wound. But rather, we say eventually it's going to fall off, and eventually it's going to get it, and therefore he's going to be a treifa. Veshet ein lo bedika mi b'chutz. We had this a couple of weeks ago. The veshet, the esophagus, you can't check it on the outside. You have to open up the inside. So he said, how are you going to check it on the inside? Because we're always going to be worried that the knife maybe cut the spot, right? When you do the shechita, the knife is going to cut that spot. So we said, at least by Oif, we said, you cut instead of the veshet, you cut the kana, which is a kosher shechita, and then you turn it inside out to look at it. What difference does it make? We could just, even though we had answered before, we had asked this question, it's an afkamina about how you have to check it. But we're saying, what difference does it make that you have to check it me b'fnim? You can do that after the animal is geshachten. So Gemara l'safik drusha. Rashi says, like we're going to say later on. Let's see the top Rashi l'safik drusha going hanaf dekel lemeichshul klaman iu kashasik. It's talking about a lion that's found that you see it amongst the animals, and the lion seems happy. And the herd of cattle are all running around. They're making noises. We say in that case where the lion is satisfied that he got his claws into one of these animals. So we assume that we have reason to assume that he clawed them. Like we said before, the clawing gets an infection into the animals that makes them a treif. So we said, but we don't know which animal he did, but we have reason to assume that one of the animals clawed. So you have to check them. And it only becomes usher if it turns red, the infection, it gets inflamed and red, opposite the wound. But the veshet and the kana, in those cases, it's not enough that it gets red by the basar opposite them. They themselves have to get red because they're harder, so they're more resistant to the infection of the animals, of the lions, of the claws. So therefore, you have to see redness on them themselves. It's not that the claw made a hole in the simanim. The poison causes the simanim to get red. By the veshet, you're not going to be able to see the redness only on the inside where it's white. On the outside that it's red, it won't be obvious that it got infected. I mean, the Gemara, the Mishnah, I think I'm justified to say, even though we keep using the lashon of poison, that it really is talking about infection. No poison coming from a lion's claws or from any animal's claws. Just have snake, maybe scorpions. In any case, so we need to know the reason why it's important to know that the outside is red and the lovin is bipnim is that if you have a suffix juice, an animal that might have been clawed, you have to check on the inside of the veshet where it's white to see if it turned red, because you're not going to see redness on the outside. He's suffix drusa. Someone brought one of these animals that might have been clawed by this lion. He said they found a satisfied lion amongst the bellowing herd. Have a kabadikle rabba leveshet me'avra. Rabba just checked the veshet on the outside. But you're the one who said you can only check for redness on the inside. So Rabba Taka opened up the veshet and checked on the inside. He found 2 drops of blood on the inside, and he said it's a treifa. Rabba was just testing Abaya to see if he was going to object. So that's he knew that he wasn't chayzer from Meshita because of Abaya. Didn't forget it. He was just testing it. Amar Ula, Yoshev lo koitz beveshet. If a thorn settled into the esophagus of an animal, was eating a thorn bush, and a thorn got stuck, it's pierced the veshet. Ein chayshin shema hivriya. We're not chayshish shema hivriya. Rashi says 2 pshatim. The first pshat is shema hivriya, that Rashi says ein chayshin shema nekav ha'hivriya v'hu krum she'ala machas makah beveshet ve'enei krum. That you're not chayshish that it grew a scar over it, which we said before would be a treifa. You don't have the chayshish that it pierced. The animals can deal with the thorn. In fact, the Gemara Ula, according to Ula, that says that we're not chayshish for a suffix that this thorn made a hole. Ula maishnam suffix drusa. Why did we say by an animal that where we heard we saw the lion amongst the cows and they're making a lot of noise, that were chayshish that maybe it clawed the animal, made them into a treifa. But over here by a thorn, when you know the animal ate a thorn, we're not chayshish that the thorn pierced it and made it into a treifa. Because Ula ain't chayshish l'suffix drusa. The Gemara says Einachanami. Ula disagrees. He says we're not chayshish for the suffix drusha as well. He disagrees with Rava, who said before that we are chayshish. Umayshna mishnei chatifas. Well, how is it different? in the rule of the case of Asham Tali, we said that if you have two pieces of basar, akash al chalev, one is a chalev, which is asr to eat, akash al shuman, and one is regular animal fats, which are mutter, that we say that you have to bring an Asham Tali misafik. Why do we say that suffix is asr and this suffix is a mutter? Hasam mischazik isura. Over there, by the case of the two chalev, one of chalev and one of shuman, we know that there's isser here. So once there's already isser existing, we have to be chayshish. But in our case, the case of the thorn, we don't know that an isser actually happened. We know there's a potential that it could have made a hole. We don't know that it happened. So therefore, it's going to be mutter. And actually, it will be the same thing by the drusa, which he's also going to say is going to be mutter. So it's interesting that this is a good example, like where we see what is chazik isura means. How is this different from someone who shechts with a knife, and then after the shechita you find that there's a nick in the knife, which we know can cause ikur, can cause dragging, ripping the shechita, which is possible. But we know it's not as it's l'chayre, it's chazik isura. It's not as chazik isura. I'm sorry, we don't know that it did it incorrectly. No, even though it's chazik isura, but we know that there is a problem with the knife. So the question just did the problem come after the shechita or before, but the problem exists. So therefore we have to be chayshish that it was done. The shechita was done incorrect. But we know that the rule is that safek tameh v'shayachid is always tameh. So the Gemara, no, you can't bring a raya. You can't ask from safek tumah. Who is saying we're not chayshish for the thorn, and we are chayshish for a safek tumah v'shayachid. Well, tamech nid ma'il safek tumah v'sharabim. The sveikay tar. We ask him from safek tumah v'shayachid. Let's ask from safek tumah. You'll bring a raya from safek tumah v'sharabim, which is tar.
What's the case?
Of safek tumah v'sharabim and shayachid.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's mesupik, whether he walked over a kever, if it's in the shayachid, is going to be tar. If it's in the sharabim, it's going to be tameh. There's a klal we have, as we're going to see. It's learned out from Saita. The Torah is that we say by Saita that if the isha was nisyached, he was makana. He told her, "Don't go be miyached with this man." And he went. If she went and was miyached him in private, so then she's going to be tameh. We use the lashon tameh about her, that she's considered a saita. And if she was not miyached, meaning she stayed in public with him, then she's tar. So we learn out from there to tumah that safek tumah also over there. It's also a safek by saita. So we learn out from there to tumah in general that b'sharabim it's going to be tar and b'shayachid it's going to be tameh.
Rakasha is why is it tameh which surabim?
Well, no, Akasha is we wanted to ask on Ula. Ula said a thorn that we found is not make it a trait. So we said, but we see that a safek tumah b'shayachid is tameh. So why don't we learn from there? So we said, oh, what do you mean? It's what you say from safek tumah b'shayachid, you can say from safek tumah b'sharabim, which is tar. So what kind of raya is that? Ella. Hasam hilchos gemirila misaita. Elamai, there's no rayas. The din of tumah, both b'sharab and b'shayachid is exeris. Even though we say hilchos gemirila, what it means in this case is exeris hakasav that we learn it from saita and has no relevance to a general din of sveikas. It's a specific din legabi tumah. It doesn't teach us anything about generally whether a suffix is kosher or possible. Yosef Ahumi Rabbanim Kamei Rav Kahana. One of the Chacham was sitting in front of Kahana. Yosef Kahana Nimtzas Itma. That which Ula said that if you find a thorn inside of the animal, that it's tar. That's only if you find the thorn lying around. Aval Yashav, if it's lodged into the inside of the veshet, you shech the animal and you find the thorn lodged in the in the veshet or the kana of the animal, chayshinin, then you have to be chayiv that it made a nekev and the nekev healed over. Obviously, if there's a hole that goes all the way through, it's going to be a nekev. We're talking about where there's no nekev, and we're saying that we assume it healed. Amalu Rav Kahana lo tetzisulei. Rav Kahana says no, it's incorrect what you're saying. Yoshavit. It's taka talking about where the thorn is lodged in the animal. Al limtzas le'itzrichle le'ula. There would be no real ula say Kiddush that if you find a thorn inside of an animal that is kosher, the kula chayu braysa kutziyacha. All animals eat things with thorns. That's perfectly normal behavior. There would never be a kosher animal. Every single animal will be a treifa if you go through its stomach and you find thorns, because they eat things with thorns. That's typical. Says Chiddush is only where it was lodged in the animal. Itma. Turbetz haveshet. The turbetz haveshet is the top, some portion on the top of the veshet of the esophagus. The top of the esophagus where it reaches the throat of the animal. That last portion of the trachea. Not of the trachea. The esophagus. Rav Amar b'mashahu. Rav says if there's a hole in it, it's going to be nekev. We're going to see two different reasons. Of Pashtus, we're going to say now, our Havamin is that that's still part of the Veshet, and we said a hole in the Veshet passes. So even Mashu, any hole is going to make it a trade. But Shmuel says it has to be roiv of this turbitz, this top of the Veshet has to be, roiv of it has to be cut in order for it to become a trade. Rav Mashu Makom Shkitu. Rav said Samashu. It's still part of the Veshet, which is the Makom Shkita, and the Nekev passes. Shmuel Beruva Lav Makom Shkita. Shmuel says, no, you need a roy. It's not the Makom Shkita. It's still part of the Veshet, but it's the part that's, if you remember, we said that you can't use the whole Veshet. It's only up to a certain point, right? We talked about the different halakim, the kaiva and the madran, the sloping part. So this is part of the veshet. That's not the makom shchita. So Gemara, Hainiu turbets haveshet. What is the turbets haveshet? Amam bar Baruch Mashmul kol shechoit chayu markev. Anything that if you cut it and it will widen. It means it depends on the relative hardness that's closer to the throat. The veshet softens, and therefore when you cut it, it will open up wide, it will widen, the hole will widen, it will expand, because it's soft. Zeo turbetz haveshet. So the part that's soft and opens up is the turbetz haveshet. But if you cut it and it doesn't, nothing happens to it, it stays in its place, zeu veshet. That's already the actual veshet. Amul Rapapi, Malo Yamarachi, Umanu Rabibi Abaya disagrees with it. Ela kolsha choitchay, ba'ayim b'kayim zeh tarbetz haveshet. If it stays in the same way it was, that's also part of the part that's not part of the veshet of the esophagus. It's the upper esophagus. In order to be the veshet itself is so hard that when you cut it, it contracts. But anything that stays in its place, unlike the first mandama said that stays in its place is the veshet, he says no, that's also part of the veshet. Tabert Tavesh. Yoina Amar, Rav Zera Mevalosa. Rav Zera says from the part that you swallow, meaning that he holds that it's only the last very small portion, a tiny portion of the esophagus is considered the turbet savesh. The common Rav Avia pachas misarosa v'adaf michitasa. It's less than a barley and more than a wheat kernel. I thought a wheat kernel is bigger than a barley, but I guess I'm wrong. But somewhere in between the size of a barley and a wheat kernel, that's the turbet haves. Who tur the havel of Rav Ukva? Rav Ukva had a cow. The askel beishchita beturbet haveshet, the gama beveshet. He started shechting it in this turbet haveshet, and he ended in the veshet itself. Like we said, the turbetz veshet, you have to shech the roiv of it. Well, we actually had a machlokes, right? Rav said it's b'mashu, Su said beruba. Rav had said it's part of the veshet itself. Amar Rava, Ramina le Chumri de Rav v'Chumri de Shmuel v'Tarifna. So both according to Rav and according to Shmuel, it's not going to be possible because according to Rav, it's part of the veshet, so you're allowed to shecht. It's okay that he shechted in the turbets ha veshet. It's part of the veshet. And according to Shmuel, you have to cut through right of it, and he only did a little bit there, and then he went into the actual veshet. But Rava, for some reason, decided to say the chumras of both. He's going to say like Rav that said that even b'mashahu over there nika b'mashahu, and he's going to not say like Rav said that it's a kasher shchita. Karifna le chumra de Rav Rav b'mashahu milch de Rav chumra de Shmuel Karifna le chumra de Rav Rav b'mashahu because Rav had said it's b'mashahu. Correct him Rav makom shchitahu. But Rav says it's a makom shchita, so shouldn't be possible. Shmuel Amalav makom shchita. I say that I'm saying the chumrah of Shmuel that it's not the makom shchita. Shmuel Amba Berubai, but according to Shmuel it has to be right, and you only did a little bit. Karav Dama Masha. So he was being mach. Igalgal Nosa Matoy Lekamei Ravaba. They brought this to Ravaba. Amalu Tura Ben Lerav Ben Leshmuel Shari. Zero Amal Lebrei the Rav Yosef Archama. Go tell the son of Rav Yosef Archama, which is Rabbah. The Lishon to Tura Lamari, that he made a wrong psak, that he paskin like the chumras of Rav and Shmuel. It doesn't make sense. You have to choose one explanation. It doesn't make sense to passel according to either one of them. You can't say it's possible. So he has to pay back for because he made a wrong psak to passel this animal. Amar Mar Breder Avina Musvina Tiyufta Klape Sane de Rava. I'm going to ask a kasha to the enemies of Rava, which is his or Rava. He wanted to say, I have a kash on it. We say that the halacha is like Beis Hillel, but it's a last Kedivri Shammai, Oisik Kedivri Shammai, Kedivri Beis Hillel. You can do Beis Hillel, but if you want to do like Beis Shammai, you can do like Beis Shammai. You can do like Beis Hillel, you can do like Beis Hillel. But Oisik Mikula Beis Shammai, Mikula Beis Hillel Rasha. If someone picks and chooses that he does like the Kulas of Beis Shammai and the Kulas of Beis Hillel, then he's a Rasha. Mechum Beis Shammai, Mechum Beis Hillel, all of a someone who only does the chumras of each one, he's a fool that goes in the dark. So before we get to Akasha, Liksiv Shammai Kukuleim B'Chumrein, Ikvei Sil Kukuleim Chumrein. You have to Ikvei Shammai. You have to do either like Beis Shammai with their both their close in the chumras, or like Beis Hillel like their close in the chumras. But in any case, before we get to Akasha, Guv Akasha, Amal Olam Malach Beis Hillel. But the Tanya Aretz last Beis Shammai Yasa. How can we say that the halacha is a Beis Hillel and then we say you have the option to follow Beis Shammai? The kasha kan of a baskol kan la'achar baskol. That which we said you have the option was before the baskol. Once the baskol said halacha is like Beis Hillel, we have to follow Beis Hillel. It was before, even before, but we don't listen to the baskol. And Yitaka still have, even though halacha is like Beis Hillel, you have the option to go like Beis Shammai. But in any case, this is the kasha is like we said. How could you say that this animal is going to be, that you cut by the turbets haveshet, that it's going to be puzzle according to Rav, and both according to Rav and Shmuel, it's kosher. Amarav Tavas Kula Karav Avda. Chiyasar Mamaloi Tatisulu Lahani Klal the Kal Yehuda Achim Mishmei the Rav. Achim Rav Veshan also Shir Michal there's a Veshan Lam Makom Shkiti. Holds taka that the turban is chayav in a nik of mashahu, but it's not a makom shkita. He has a different sheet than Rav. Rav was not coming because it's not a makom shkita. He holds it. I'm saying it's not because it is a makom shkita. It's not a makom shkita, and it will pass with a nekev, and you can't check there as well. Come with the mashahu. Okay, we're gonna stop over here. We're way over. Sorry.